This is Ed Rep Radio, presented by Eastman Music Company. This is Ed Rep Radio, a podcast to bring you ideas and information from industry experts you can use on the road every day. Presented by Eastman Music Company, and I'm your host, Shane Duell. Today we are talking with LaDonna Gibson of Amro Music in Memphis, Tennessee. LaDonna has 25 years of experience on the road after 17 years as a teacher. In our conversation today, she shares some useful advice to those who tend to work with smaller schools and how many of those smaller schools hold more business than you may think. She also talks about her experiences building relationships with new band directors, her favorite parts of the job, and more. LaDonna Gibson, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm looking forward to getting to know you better. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
So, Scott Reif, a fellow Eastman teammate of mine, I asked him, so who should I talk to? Who should I interview for Ed Rep Radio? And without hesitation, he said, you need to call LaDonna Gibson. So I'm very much looking forward to getting to know you. And if you don't mind, let's just start with some of the basics. Where do you work? What markets do you cover? What's your day-to-day look like there? And how long have you been doing this job?
I am finishing my 25th year in May, and I work for Amro Music Company, and I am in Arkansas. So the company itself is based in Memphis, Tennessee, and I am one of the two Arkansas reps, and I am 2 hours. My home is 2 hours from Memphis. My furthest school I see from Memphis is 4 hours.
Whoa.
So it's a large, very rural area.
Okay. Do you have a lot of small schools?
I have a lot of small schools.
Okay, great. That'll help those out there listening that also have a lot of small schools.
Yeah.
Do you have any really big, powerful schools in maybe separate towns you have to drive to, or is it mostly smaller schools?
It's mostly smaller, but I do have some larger schools. I have a couple of bands that do BOA.
Oh, okay. Serious ones.
So it's a different area.
Yeah. Okay. So, Amro Music, 25 years. That's impressive. That's a lot of years on the road.
It is. It is. I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Awesome. So, I'm curious, why do you enjoy it? I mean, obviously, if you've been there for 25 years, there's something you like about it. So, what do you think is your favorite thing?
Well, every day's different. So, it's the routes pretty much stay the same, but every day is just a little bit different depending on which school you're going to and what's happening in that program, what they're doing. And I really like all of the band directors, and visiting with them is always good. So it's a very good setup.
Yeah. I'm curious, what did you do before Amro Music?
I was band director, high school band director for 17 years.
Oh, okay. So you've seen both sides.
I have.
Yeah. Do you think that's helpful?
It is very helpful. And I said, after I'd been doing the ed rep job for, just a year, I said, if I had done that for a year before I taught, I would have been a much better band director.
Interesting. Why do you think that is?
There's just so much to learn about this side of the job that helps with teaching.
That's an interesting point. So if you could go back to yourself as a band director, knowing what you know now from 25 years in the music industry side of things, what do you think are some of the most important things that band directors should know that you now know?
Well, I would think differently about finances for parents, and particularly that number one, that's not my business. The individual parent finances, you can't guess that. You don't know a family's priorities. They may appear that they don't have just a whole lot, and you may think, and assume in the back of your mind that they may not can afford this, but the truth is you don't know. And there have been times that I've wondered about parents that then paid cash for the instrument before they left, completely.
Surprised you?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you think that happens to a lot of ed reps?
I do. There also are a lot of grandparents raising children in our area.
Okay.
Uh, at a meeting, there are times when it's at least 50-50 with when they're, for rental meetings.
Okay. So grandparents and parents,
Right,
50-50. Yeah.
right, right.
How do you think that affects the topic we just talked about with the finances?
Oh, I don't know if I should. We have a massive drug problem through rural Arkansas.
Mm,
And I think that one of the main reasons, and this had started before I left the teaching area, the with I had a lot of parents that weren't able to take care of their kids, and
okay.
grandparents had stepped in.
Mm, about a necessity.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Mm. Those kids need more music, right?
right.
As much as they can get. Hmm. What else do you wish you could go back and tell yourself as a teacher, now that you know what you know?
It's not necessary to have the real expensive mouthpiece on the beginner instrument.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
I was one that had it, and I also was one that, because my instrument's clarinet, that was my priority, was that the clarinet players had, specifics, whereas it wasn't as much of a priority with brass. You know, is
Hmm.
um,
Okay.
and the funny thing is, I had some very good clarinet players, but I also had, very good brass players, all state players, and all that.
Hmm. Interesting. Do you think, I mean, obviously, you know a lot more about equipment and all of the gear that you sell at Amro Music. Now that you know way more about that stuff, do you think your equipment preferences would have changed as a band director?
Yes, it's been so long, because
Hmm.
when Yamaha saxophones just got popular in Arkansas, I was teaching and thought, "Well, can they really be that good?"
Hmm.
That's the differences. Now there's so many different options,
Sure.
and there are some coming in that their prices are better, and they may not have that one title connected or what have you, but they're very good instruments, and
Hmm.
it's sometimes hard to get a band director to have an open mind about that and try it. When they do, it's like, yeah, yeah, you're right.
Right. That is a challenge. That is. So I'd like to zoom out a little bit. The topic of being an ed rep, and obviously you have a lot of experience, and you've probably, as a band director, seen quite a few different ed reps over your life as a teacher. What do you think what's the main reason, the number one reason an ed rep's role exists in a school music store? Why are you out there?
Because people still like face to face contact, and we're ed reps are the face of the company. Um, I know that they do like that, and
Hmm.
they like the attention, but they also just like the human part of it.
Right. How do you think they would react if you said, "Hey, we're doing away with all ed reps. Everything's going to be online now"? How do you think they'd react to that?
In my area, there'd be schools they would just say, "Well, we can't do it because internet is so iffy here that
Oh,
I
yeah.
have some of those schools." Yes,
Really? Huh.
yes, yes, but
So they
I don't
physically
know.
need you there.
There are there might be a few younger band directors that, you know, grew up into everything's online, that might say, "Okay." However, I had one that let me know a couple of weeks ago that he had gotten an email from a company that's all online wanting to do his rental business, and he let me know that, and he said, it's crazy what they're offering, but I just want you to know I'm not changing. I enjoy visiting." He's
Hmm.
a first year teacher, so.
A first year teacher.
Mhm.
Wow. So it's not like a long time customer who you've established a relationship with. They're brand new and they still want you there in person.
Mhm.
Well,
Yes,
nice work. Yeah, you must have established a good rapport right away.
I hope so. That's the goal.
Yeah, great. We'll get to that part too about how to build relationships best with band and orchestra teachers. In your time as a teacher and as an ed rep, have you seen the role of the ed rep change at all, or is it pretty much still the same as it's been for decades?
It is pretty much the same as far as the role goes. You
Okay.
still, you get up, you drive, you deliver things, you visit, you try to be consistent.
Hmm.
that part is still pretty much the same.
Yeah, yeah. Are there any new skills you think are required now versus before? Maybe new technologies or things you have to keep up on?
Technology, definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, definitely. Uh, that's probably the biggest change has
Hmm.
been in technology.
Do you enjoy using that technology?
I enjoy it, and I have about 3 seconds worth of patience if I can't get it figured out.
Yeah. Well, the listeners don't realize this, but you and I spent about 15 minutes trying to get our technology to work. So,
Definitely.
yeah, I'm the same way. I understand. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's great when it works, right?
Right.
So,
Uh,
go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say when we first started using Zoom for things, it was, you know, a struggle at first
Hmm.
to just get used to that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious, is there a piece of technology or a program or something that's come along in, let's just say, the last 5 years that you do feel is really useful, and even if there was a learning curve, you feel like it's worth it to try to get to know and to use?
Oh, there's probably a lot.
Hmm.
Um, could I name them all right now? No, I couldn't. But I have band directors that and they are my go-to, especially the younger ones that use some things. I'll go in, they're using something, and I'm like, that's just really cool. Show me what you're doing here and how does that work? And that happens pretty frequently.
Hmm. So, what are the most important skills you think? If you're talking to, say, a new ed rep and they're just getting started and they're looking to you for advice, like probably many listening right now, what are some of the most important skills that an ed rep needs to develop to be successful, like you are?
Well, you don't have to do everything at the very beginning. You can you can start a little slower and figure out what works best for you, what works best for your band directors, what kind of route works best even for you and for them, what they're expecting. When I started, I was building a territory.
Hmm.
It was new. I had a couple of schools, but they were looking to expand in Arkansas, and so that was a luxury, I think, at this point, other than just walking into something that was already established.
Hmm.
So at first, I was very much bothered that I had free time because teaching that didn't exist. And so I thought, well, what am I doing wrong? What have I done? I've got some free time. And Chip Overwater was the CEO at the time, and we were talking about it, and he said, enjoy it. It won't last long. And I wish now I had enjoyed it a little bit more while I had it because he was absolutely right. It did not last long. So just knowing that you can't do it all at one time. Just take your time. But also, as you're doing that, build consistency because people like that. And, you know, be, you have to be self motivated because, especially if you go coming into it from a job like I had where you were so used to having all of your time taken and then you still have to stay self-motivated and you still have to plan and not fall into I'm going to sleep a little later now while it's easier type pattern. It's just you still get up and you do the job, and uh, as the time goes on it kind of becomes second nature to you, but it also grows quickly.
Hmm. And you get busier, it sounds like.
Yes, very busy.
Yeah. Do you think some people struggle with the free time or the freedom, I guess you could say, where no one's riding with you, no one's watching over you? Do you think that's part of that self motivation you're talking about?
Yes, I think it could be for sure.
Hmm. Hmm. How would somebody not riding out with you, you don't have someone, managing you in a traditional sense where maybe someone's in the store, they can see you, they can, okay, take your break now, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, how can someone in the store know you're being successful out there? Know that you're doing your job? What's the sign?
Your product, what you're delivering, are you successful? Are you, handling things? It bothers any rep to have a meeting that's a failure,
Hmm.
and sometimes you can't do anything about that. But you need to make sure that you couldn't do anything about that. That it's not left off parts on your end or things that you didn't follow through with on the band director. That you've done all of your part, and they know that because typically then you come back and the product or the final the sale. I mean, it's hard for me to. It's always been hard for me to say I'm a salesperson, and that was another thing is they knew that at the beginning when they hired me, and I was told, "Well, you are a salesperson. You sold your program in a rural
Mm-hmm.
community," and so I've treated it that way, like it was my program. And we've had a rep or two that has been on board, not permanently, but at different times, that have said to me, I just don't want to be a salesperson. That's, told them that story too. This is what you did before. And we're so much more than a salesperson, so much more than a
Mm-hmm.
salesperson. And I have no problem with that as far as the salesperson part goes now. Coming out of education, it was, you just think of it differently. But there's so much more involved. You're still an educator.
Good point. Educating on what? To who?
To well, to many people, for one thing, to parents. And we talked about changes in the industry as far and things that have happened, and now they can stand right in front of you and Google what they're
Mm.
getting, and then the parent can say, "Yeah, well, we can get it here for $300, and yours is $900." So you have to take the time for just a minute to educate them on why there's that difference. So that's one way. Now I add that into my speech. After a while, I thought this has got to stop. There's not time for these kind of things to happen. And so I tell them in the rental meeting speech, you know, you can go online, you can do this and find this, but here's what happens, and here's what you're going to get with our product. Here's what we're going to offer to you. Uh, and it's a lot. So, they start to think, maybe that's okay.
Mm.
But you're educating band directors. If you have, a history of band experience, which I don't know that most reps do, most of them do at Amro, but you can be very helpful in that way, especially with the younger directors. And I typically have a lot of younger directors, and they're very open to asking questions, and we talk about it and discuss the possibilities. Sometimes I'll say, that's a great idea. I wish I'd known that years
Mm.
ago.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. You mentioned giving your rental night speech to parents and how they can go online and why you're better. I'm curious. You don't have to get super Amro specific, but just kind of generally with music stores, brick and mortar music stores with ed reps like yourself. What do you say to parents who see products way less online? Maybe it's not the same product, but what do you tell them? How do you get them to stay with you instead of going online?
Well, in the meeting before that comes up, I tell them that can come up, and that a lot of times it's an instrument that should anything happen to it, they're just out that money. But I also, I tell them this is our product is a package. So a lot of it's probably the majority are mothers that come to the meeting,
Hmm.
and mostly they don't want to have to leave the meeting and go find the rest of the stuff. And so they have the package right there. They leave the meeting, and I tell them the object is when you leave here, your part's finished, except you'll need to pick up the earplugs or whatever you need at home because they're going to practice. Um, but they have what they need. They have everything that the director has requested that they have. They have the brand of instrument that the directors have approved. You have the repair that's going to be taken care of. I'm here weekly if you have a problem, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. When you say package, do you mean the instrument, the stand, the book, any accessories?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you mean by okay.
Yeah.
So convenience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Good. A topic that comes up quite a bit, talking to ed reps or through this podcast, it comes up quite a bit. It's building relationships with teachers. And you said you have a lot of young teachers, and there was one that you just mentioned was a first year teacher. Sounds like you probably have to establish new relationships fairly often with
Yes.
teachers coming in.
Mhm.
So let's say you have a new teacher coming in. They don't know you. Maybe they're from somewhere else, out of state. They know nothing about Amro music or you or the area. How do you create such a good relationship in a short amount of time with a new band director?
Listening. The you know, they Well, when I was teaching, I tried to know about my students and the families and just what the students themselves enjoyed and the little things about them. And I think that a lot of people, most people, like it when someone has an interest in them. And so I genuinely have an interest in my band directors. So I ask them questions about their life, about their family, and just to get to know them, and then listen to them.
Hmm. That comes up all the time. Yeah, listening is so important, isn't it?
It is.
Do you have teachers who have maybe experienced other ed reps who didn't listen? They ever talk about um, different approaches that they didn't particularly like?
Yes, it's not necessarily not listening as much as it is. Well, I guess it would be kind of not listening to what their needs are
Hmm.
because they like organization and consistency, and sometimes they don't feel that or they haven't felt that in the past.
Hmm. Yeah, there's that word again, consistency. So this might sound like a funny question, but how do you make sure you're consistently consistent? Do you have a system? Do you have a way of recording things or writing it down, or how do you make sure that you're consistent?
I do take a lot of notes.
Hmm.
I
Okay.
hadn't thought about it that way, but I do take a lot of notes.
Okay.
And I follow the same schedule weekly. This time of year, I just started my step up season, and so they know, and I tell new accounts, when that happens, I'll have to do a different route, and on Sundays I send out what those changes are going to be, so they know what to expect for the
Hmm.
week, and then follow that one. But there's no reason not to communicate now with texting and email, and it's just too easy not to keep them informed on what's happening.
Yeah, yeah, good point. I was just talking to another ed rep who has a really hard time getting band directors to email back. Do you have that
Hmm.
issue? Do you have that
Yes,
problem?
yes.
If that's an issue, how do you actually have a good communication with band directors?
Because if they don't answer an email, I'll text. If they don't respond, I'll call them.
Ah,
Yeah, and say, "Oh, I think you're not getting my email." Oh, let me check.
so you're also consistently persistent.
Yeah, I guess so.
So, getting a band director's cell phone number, do you ever have a hard time doing that, or they just give it to you pretty freely?
They give it to me.
Okay. With the younger generation, especially like the new band directors coming out, do they prefer texts?
Yes,
They
they,
do.
they do.
Okay. It sounds like a better way to get a hold of a teacher versus
Right,
email.
right.
All right. Good tip right there. Yeah. So again, I was talking to an ed rep who was having a hard time just getting in for that very, very first meeting. Brand new teacher, not responding to emails. And because of that, the ed rep doesn't know their phone number. They haven't even been able to get in front of them.
Mhm.
Do you What's your system? How do you actually get in front of a teacher for that very first time to establish that first meeting? How do you do that?
If I haven't been able to reach them, I'll just go to the school and
You walk into the
yeah,
front door?
yes,
Yeah, yeah. Do you know those secretaries pretty well, or the front office staff?
I do. The ones I have to go through the front office, I still have, probably largely because I'm female, but I still have a lot of schools I can just walk into, just
Huh.
to the band room, and I have some that they were very at the beginning. They wanted the whole sign in process and all that, and I think I'm down to one that actually has me sign in and everything, and the others will just go wave and say go on.
Yeah, yeah. Probably makes your life a lot easier not having to go through
It
that rigmarole every single time, right?
it sure does.
Yeah, yeah. Some ed reps have a hard time with that. They have to check in every
Hmm.
single time, and they have to put the badge on, and they have to walk way down the hallway to the band room. Any tips on helping ed reps just to get to that point where the staff just waves you through?
Maybe just talking to them, if the band director can't do anything, maybe just talking in the office and saying, "Look, I'm here every week, and I have
Hmm.
things to carry sometimes. Can I use the band room side door or what have you?"
Communication again. That always helps.
Hmm.
Do you have many orchestra teachers in your area, in your smaller schools especially, or is it just band?
Uh, right now, I just have band. Uh,
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah, we have very few orchestras, very few.
Okay. So when you work on Step Ups, it's 100% band. And Nick Gaverwater was on Ed Rep Radio. Well, I lost track now. A couple seasons ago, maybe you're talking about that amazing Step Up system that you as Ed Reps at Amro Music will use to get lots of Step Ups out into the schools. For the smaller schools that you work with, does that system still work well, the company-wide system you do, or do you have to do something else because it's more rural or different kinds of schools than maybe a different rep closer to town?
No, if the students can see the instrument and hold the instrument and play on it, then that's a big thing. Now, in smaller schools, a director may have two or three students that they think should step up. I mean, I'm talking some really small schools. In that
Hmm.
case, I'll tell them if this is a student that you trust, the family is trustworthy, let them take it home and show it to their folks. And
Hmm.
then, I email them individually and in those smaller schools and tell them more about it. The parents of the ones that are very interested in it.
So even though at those smaller schools, you're saying the Step Ups still work. Parents still get Step Ups.
Yes, I
Hmm.
was one of the first schools that Amro had a step up
As a
program.
teacher, you're saying.
Yes,
Okay.
and now I hadn't been teaching real long. Pat Aberwater, Nick's father, was my rep at the time,
Okay.
that long ago, and he talked to me about it as being something they were trying to start, and uh, our program was growing quickly and very rural, small town,
Hmm.
and he did a really large step up meeting at that first one. But I did then what I still do, talking to parents, even on this side of it, and it's just honesty. It's just education and honesty because the first thing I'll say is, "Are you sure your child's going to stay in the program? And are they working at it? This is
Hmm.
for the student that is serious about it and is going to continue. And if they hesitate, I say you probably should wait for a little while."
Hmm.
And I told my students when I was teaching that I'm going to ask them, I'm going to say the same thing to their parents as a teacher. And of course, the students got real serious all of a sudden about what they were doing because, but it was a great retention tool.
Yeah, great point. It goes back to what you said at the very start here. Don't assume what parents' finances are, or put your own take on what you think they can or can't afford. I think a lot of ed reps see small schools as, wow, they just can't afford it out there, so I'm not going to try. But it's really interesting to hear that you're saying that a lot of your small schools do great with step ups, and
Mhm.
that's great to hear. That's great to hear. I encourage everyone else out there, give it give it a shot to get out there into the small schools. They might surprise you.
Yeah, but they very well may. And a
Hmm.
lot of times it depends on the director and if the parents have bought into him or her.
Yeah. Do you ever see? We talked about us as ed reps, not assuming a parent's finances. Do you find teachers assume parents' finances?
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes, I think yes, definitely do. I've talked with some of my directors about not doing that.
Yeah.
That because they'll say, none of my parents can afford anything. How they tell you that? I mean, how do you know that? Because that should be personal. That's not our business.
Right. Can you think of a school where the teacher originally said that and was protective of the parents, and they didn't want to do a step up? Have you had a teacher change their mind, do a step up night, and then be surprised?
I have. I have two little different stories. One, it was a smaller school, not they had quite a few kids in band, but the school itself was small.
Okay.
And they did step up thinking that, no, we're not going to have much. And they did a lot. I had to bring more instruments to them.
Hmm.
Had a meeting recently when the meeting was over, and one of the directors came up and said, that last clarinet player that bought, she sits last chair in the second junior high band. And I said, well, her mother thinks she's going to stay in and And our commitment talk between the three of us, the students said that she was going to work harder at it.
Hmm.
So maybe that helped there. I just don't think they know it. If the band director communicates everything to the students and to the parents about the Step Up program, it will work if they communicate everything. One time, I had a parent come in mad, and she said,
Hmm.
"I I don't want to have to do this. There's no reason we should be here." And I was, stopped her and said, "You don't have to do this. This is an option that we offer, and it's only for the students that are doing really well and are going to stay in the program." She said, "Well, are you saying that my child doesn't do well?" I said, "Ma'am, I don't know your child. I'm just saying you don't have to do this. It's not something that's required. It's something we offer, and the band directors let us make this offer to you." And she turned it. "Well, I just want you to know that my child is just as good as anyone in here." I said, "I am sure that your child is." She said, "And he deserves to have that trombone." I said, "That's great, but it's not required." "Well, how much is it?" And then she walked out with a trombone.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a great story. I love it. I love it. And I bet that student was super happy and stuck in and stayed in band.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. So Amro Music, when it comes to step ups, you offer. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's basically a step up rental, right? You're used to making monthly payments on your beginning instruments, and then you make different monthly payments on the next level of instrument. Is that about right?
Yes, it's just a retail contract from instead of a rental.
Okay, so they're still making monthly payments on it.
Or they can, yes, or they can pay it,
Okay,
in
I'm
full.
curious what's more popular, particularly at these smaller schools. Is it the monthly payments, or do they just say cash? I'm done.
It was monthly payments. There are more of those, but there are
Okay.
more cash now than there used to be.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I was just curious. I was wondering if offering monthly payments on step ups, do you feel allows more people to get into it?
Yes.
It breaks down some financial barriers that allow them to actually get into a step up.
No, absolutely.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. Okay. There's definitely a mix of stores out there. Some do step up rentals or whatever you want to call them, monthly
Mhm.
payments. And some say, nope, this is financing or cash only. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I was just kind of curious. I've personally seen more students get into step ups if they have that monthly payment option. All right. Excellent. So, if you were to go back to yourself 25 years ago and you're just starting off as an ed rep, I'm sure you know a whole lot more now about the job than you did when you first started. And if you were to go back and give yourself some advice for that maybe first couple of years in the job, what would you go tell yourself?
Probably to slow down just a little.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, yeah. That I might learn more about the products themselves, the different brands, different products, and things. I find myself learning more about that now than I did
Hmm.
20 years ago. Um, I really am fortunate because I like this job. I love teaching to start with. Wasn't looking to leave, and I have no regrets. Uh, I like this job a lot. I like the band directors I see, and the people that I work with and for are excellent. So I feel
Hmm.
very fortunate.
That's great. That's great. Great fit for you, it sounds like.
Yeah, it is.
Hmm. You mentioned slowing down a little bit. Do you think ed reps can burn out if they don't slow down?
Yes, probably so. I probably should be burnt out, but for whatever reason, I'm not. But
Well, that's great.
yeah, it is. It is. But I guess the right personality can burn out on anything.
Hmm. Hmm. If you are that type of personality where you feel like you're go 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 and you need to slow down and you're not and you feel like you're heading for burnout, how do you avoid that? How do you avoid burning out if you feel like you just need to be go all the time?
Maybe change up your schedule a little bit, or just change the way you do things. And now it's more year round than because I've several schools that are year round schools, and
Hmm.
so it's just pretty much year round.
Right. Do you give yourself a break? Do you take vacations?
I do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good. That's so important.
Mhm.
Something we're not really great here in this country, right? A lot of people just don't take vacations. I think it's so
Right.
important. All right, so let's wrap it up with what is your favorite part of the job?
Every time a student gets their first band instrument, whether it is, the beginning band or step up, every time they get it and open it and we talk, it's like Christmas for me because I go over everything about it and the case and how that works and especially those students that thank their parents, and if it seems they're not going to, I'll remind them that, you need to thank them here and
Mm.
all that. But that that is my favorite. And I remember when I got my step up instrument as a beginner when I was a kid, and it was a huge deal. And I didn't know then that it was a sacrifice, but it was. And I know for a lot of these parents that they are going to sacrifice something to make this happen, and they are investing in something that they believe in, and whether it be the band director, the program, or music education, but they are investing, and that is where a band director can reap all of the benefits from that family and the other families that do that because that's a for sure.
Hmm. And you play such a big part of making those moments happen, don't you?
Yes, yes, yep, yeah. My and I've said clearly I love my job and I love teaching when I was teaching, but my passion is music education. And if I do retire someday, I'd like to do more in the advocacy world, but
Mm.
uh, I am a firm, strong believer that music education changes kids' lives.
Yes, absolutely. Great message to spread everywhere, right?
Right.
Fantastic. Well, LaDonna, I can't thank you enough for your time. I really enjoyed our conversation, and thank you for all the great work you do out there.
Well, thank you. And I will tell you too, I do love the Eastman products.
Oh,
And Scott Rife is a great friend. I see him maybe once a year usually, and catch up. But I trust him, and what he tells me about various things, I trust him. So that's what's important. But yes,
well, thank you for that. Scott is a great, great guy, and I'm very fortunate to be able to work with him. Thanks again, LaDonna. We really appreciate your time.
thank you.
We hope you found the information in this episode useful and something you can use in your everyday life as an ed rep. If there is a topic you'd like to learn more about and have presented on a future episode of Ed Rep Radio, or you'd like to give us some feedback in general, please email us at edrepradio@eastmanstrings.com. To learn more about Eastman Music Company, go to our website, eastmanmusiccompany.com, or give your Eastman rep a call. Thanks, and drive safe.